Welcome, Tammy. I'm so excited. This is the first time that I've ever had a personal client on to kind of tell their story. And I could not think of a better person to invite than you. Welcome to the Body Pot.
Thank you, Hailey. I'm really happy to be here and to share my story.
Yes. So, we have been working together since the 1st of September.
Yeah.
One-on-one. And I guess let's just start from the very beginning. I want you to take us back and rewind and start with your journey in the last couple of years and kind of go over, what your experience has been before we started working.
It's almost embarrassing to say that I really didn't know what perimenopause was. Like now on the other side of it, I can look at you and say, I'm not sure I even knew what perimenopause was. 4 and 5 and 6 years ago, I knew my cycle was changing and I knew the inevitable. Eventually, I'm going to stop having a cycle. But my journey, I would compare it to if you looked at a light switch plate on a wall and it had two switches. I've had two really significant phases. And the first time that switch went off was probably about spring of 2021. And I've been an endurance junkie all my life. I'm a middle of the pack person, so it's not like I'm out there, running races, podium, getting on a podium. None of that. It's always been about this is how I take care of my head, my stress. So I started to notice that, my run times were slowing. I felt that I needed a lot more recovery. I was getting injured a lot and like really stupid things. My calf, my hip flexor, things that I had never experienced before. And then I also started to get this little pouch around my belly, and I never had that before. um, Almost simultaneously, I started to have anxiety creep up. And in the middle of the night, I'd wake up and I'd catastrophize my life. Like at 2 in the morning, I would start this second guessing everything and monkey mind. And this is not like me at all. And I, at that time too, started to get a little bit of night sweat. So I reached out to, what do? I reach out to my coaching world and I get connected with Purple Patch out of the San Francisco Bay Area, good friends of
Mhm.
mine. They immediately put me in touch with a running coach, Emma Briggs with Endurance Explorers, fantastic person. And Emma basically said, I know what to do with you. You need to read the book Roar and understand where you're at in life. And also, let's start building in some sit training, some hit training. I've always had strength training that was more of like a periodization style. So everything she recommended seemed normal to me, nothing out of the box. When I started reading Roar, I immediately became the biggest fan of Dr. Stacy Sims and Celine Yeager, and I consumed everything they were talking about. Adaptogens became my friend. And between Emma and adaptogens and just staying on top of all the latest and greatest research, that held my symptoms at bay. So all of the anxiety, the night sweats, things like that, that really started to back that off. And I saw my run speeds come back. I saw my injuries start to go away. After about a year and a half, that second switch went off. So now the adaptogens were not working. And I was back into that mix of now I'm up in the night, I'm sleeping super light, I have no energy in the morning, I have brain fog, I can't make sense of, putting sentences together. Like at a certain point, I really thought, do I have a serious problem here? Like I had a hard time functioning even with work. So that was starting to become alarming.
Hmm.
And then the next piece of that was um, the next piece of that was I did a bunch of lab work and my inflammation markers were off the charts. My cardiac lab work was off the charts, like in an alarming way, where my endocrinologist was like, let's get you in for a cardiac scan and make sure everything is okay. I'm a really healthy eater, I'm a clean eater. So to get lab work like that was really scary for me. And also at that time, I had now that little belly pouch turned into 10 pounds. And by the time right before I learned all about Hailey, um, I went through my second round of lab work, and my labs had not moved at all. So what I had done with my endocrinologist was her immediate reaction was, let's consider putting you on hormone therapy. The
Mm.
hormone therapy, just a little bit of estrogen, some oral progesterone, will help you with your anxiety. It will help you sleep better, deeper, longer, and it will start to back off some of those night sweats. So I went on hormone therapy for about a year, and it was a short-term solution for a short-term problem. It really got me over the hurdle. And
Hmm.
I felt like with hormone therapy, I had retained some of my quality of life. But the one thing that hadn't moved was my lab work and the scale. By the time I got to you, I had gained 17 pounds over 2 years. So, yeah, this is someone who I've always been fit, I've always been active, and my eating, my activity, none of that had changed.
Hmm.
So out of nowhere, I felt like on that second switch that went off, here I was. I'm doing everything that I'm supposed to be doing. And now I've got 17 pounds on me and I don't know what to do. So I listened to the Huberman podcast with Dr. Stacy Sims, and that's when I heard about the new program that you and Stacy had put together, Power Happens. So I start doing Power Happens. I'm loving the program. It's great. And I think you guys came out with the first program was 60 minutes. The second program
Hmm.
was 30 minutes. And I thought, oh, well, I'll go into the 30-minute program. And I don't need to be doing, hours in the gym. All I need to do is get in and get out. So a 30-minute program, let's see what that's all about. And it wasn't helping me move, it wasn't helping me move the needle. And out of sheer desperation, I sent you a message through your app, and I think I asked for a nutrition consult.
Yeah, which is so funny because I wasn't taking anyone. This last year was so bananas to me.
Mhm.
And I really don't even promote that I do one-on-one. It's kind of on my website, but I really just pass it off to other coaches because I just haven't had the time. And I don't know why. Like I just was like, yeah,
I slipped through the
sure.
cracks. Yeah.
Oh, sure, I'm gonna take Tammy. And then when I met you, I was like, oh, there was just a genuine connection. But let's talk
Yeah.
about what was your age when you had started, with the running company versus when you found me on Huberman podcast and learned about the power programs.
Yeah. So let me think. Spring of 2023, I was 52.
Hmm.
Wait, let me
Okay.
do the math. 68 to 52.
How old are you?
What the hell is wrong with me? This is something you'll obviously edit
This
out.
is this is what I have every time because I'm in the thick. I'm 47. I'm in the thick of the brain fog perimenopause. And now everyone who has meetings with me weekly, they're just like, "Oh, okay, Hailey." I'm like, what was I saying? I was
2021.
mid-sentence.
Okay, hello. Spring of 2023, I was 53.
Mm,
Yeah,
okay. So now you're
I'm 56.
56.
Yeah.
So did you feel like as all of these things were happening over the years, this is just how I'm going to be? Because you're exercising regularly. I mean, you eat healthy. We figured that out right when we first started working together, but there were some things we learned along the way. But okay, so here you are, and you're just like, well, but the scale is still not moving, and I've gained this weight. And for you, there was an emotional connection with like, I just want to feel myself. Like I don't want to be 20 years old again, but I want to feel like myself and I don't recognize myself. So let's begin there.
For sure. Think that a lot of women in it say in my activity level, in
Hmm.
my activity behavior, our first step is to reach out to someone that's an expert that can help me. And then the next piece of it is to ingest everything you can possibly ingest to learn, to understand, to be able to speak this new language. And that's exactly what I did for 4 years. I was consuming everything I possibly could to understand what I was going through, how to adjust my behavior, how to relearn.
Hmm.
And also, I was surrounding myself with professionals that could help guide me in this phase. So by the time I reached you, I I was a broken person. I really felt like, is this my new normal now? Like, had my years of just being able to be healthy, thinking about my lab work, of being able to be active, thinking about my injuries and my ability to go out and run and just enjoy the outdoors and have that stress reduction, like, has all of this changed now? And I have to take this hard right and
Hmm.
start going down a new path. So I was broken when I got to you. And I think at one point I captured just an overview of my perimenopause journey. And I shared with you, it might make me a little teary, that I was hiding out in like blousy summer dresses, in blousy pants and loose tops. And I wouldn't even change in front of my husband anymore because I felt like I'm just disappearing into our wall. I didn't feel good about myself. Yeah.
And that was the most emotional part when you wrote that is that resonates because I hear this so much and maybe not in that depth when people just originally reach out to me, but they're just like they just feel defeated.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, I'm doing all of the things. So I have to say, when I started to initially work with you at first, I was like, sometimes this is the hardest client to have because if you really are nailing everything and you're doing it all right, like, how do we make movement? Are you an outlier of something is
Right.
happening that is out of my scope of practice, or can we take the information and the education and can we really just try to dial in a few things and see if we can get the scale moving in a healthy way. So I was very direct about that. And I hope that you would back me on this and you feel the same way, that I wasn't like, all right, Tammy, we're going to cut you to 900 calories a day. You're going to lose weight, because you would, but
Right.
at a cost.
Yeah. Well, to coincide with the emotion around um, my new normal at that time was a concern for my health. And
Mhm.
as I said, my cardiac numbers had skyrocketed. So now all of a sudden you start having those conversations with your endocrinologist about certain supplements to help bring that down. Then the next conversation is statins. That for someone who has never been had to rely upon medications, I've been healthy my whole life. You
Mhm.
start thinking about, I don't want to go down that track. Like, I've fixed everything that has come up for me in my
Mhm.
health by peeling back the layers and looking at what am I consuming, what is my lifestyle, not immediately looking for a pill. So in addition to into that concern about, oh my gosh, my weight and my activity, like how do I get this back, was also about my health.
Mhm. So when we first started, I remember you the first couple of weeks, and I'm like, all right, clearly you eat well, but we really want to dive into what does that look like? And I will say right now, there's no perfect macro split, but there are macro ranges. And so we really talked about like hitting that protein number, yes, but then also I think, and this is not for everyone, because I know there's a lot of women with eating, with disordered eating that can't go down this road. But for someone, you know, I wanted you to get a scale and actually weigh, because you're like, well, I'm having this protein shake, it's great. But then when we started to input the calories, I remember you coming to me and you were like, Hailey, my morning smoothie was like 700
Yeah.
calories. And I was like, okay, well, what did you think it was? Maybe 400. Okay, so there's almost like your deficit right there. And it was healthy food. And this is not like every, that all of those foods, just because they're healthy, we still have to tailor in some things if we want to try to get some movement in a healthy way. So what did you learn about that first month?
Yeah. So, some of the messaging that I had received over the course of the last few years was also about letting go of counting calories, letting go of tracking, because again, people like me who have this activity lifestyle, it's always about what are my nutrition windows? What's
Mm,
my timing around nutrition? What am I consuming? What are my macros? And that can spin a
for
person
sure.
out.
Hmm.
So, over the course of these last few years, I had let that go.
Yeah.
And what I realized when I bought my little $13 food scale was I had lost connection with what a tablespoon actually was, or what 3 ounces or 4 ounces or 6 ounces of meat actually was. And that was a huge awakening for me.
Hmm.
Um, at the time that you and I connected, I was willing to do, it's like, well, what the heck? What do I have to lose? I'm going to follow her path and her direction. And if in 4 months I go absolutely nowhere, okay. But what do I have to lose? So to take a couple of weeks and really familiarize myself with an ounce, a cup, a
Hmm.
whatever, it wasn't brain surgery, it just took a little bit more time. And it was a huge awakening that I had really lost sight of what a serving is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think that's the important part is I don't recommend calorie counting. And I mean, I never did up until I got into this space and I started working for myself with someone and then, morphed to where I am today. But it is an educational tool to be used at a certain time, not year round, not obsessively, not taking all of like, your food scale on vacation and you can never relax. It is teaching how do we look at the education to see what those serving sizes, dial it in, and then we have the freedom to have more of this lifestyle lean approach. So since we've been working together since September, how much weight have you lost?
I've lost 17 pounds.
Which every week it's like cheering and I want to cry because when I look at your measurements since September, it's now, the first part of January. We are down 4 inches from your waist, almost 5 inches on the thigh, an inch and a half on the hips, and 2 inches above the navel, down 5 inches. That's massive.
I know.
Like it's massive.
I know.
And the weight loss is 17 pounds sounds amazing, and it is. It was done over, 13 to 14 weeks. So this
Yeah.
is like when you look at it, but I'm like, you put in the work, you did the work. It was not always fun. But you stayed the course. And did you ever feel like it was erratic? It was aggressive, that you felt like crap, like you were just like, I can't do this anymore. How did you feel during this process?
I know for myself that it usually takes about 4, 6-ish, 6, 8-ish weeks before I start to see movement. It's like my body holds on, it doesn't know
Mm-hmm.
what's happening, but then all of a sudden, once that domino hits, then I start to see movement. And so the first 4 to 6 weeks, we would see little shifts. Um, I was just happy to have an advocate and talking to you once a week. I don't think it ever felt hard. It never, certainly never felt like a slog. I didn't feel like I'm depriving myself because, I mean, you can get full on protein pretty quickly and a
Yeah.
bunch of vegetables. Like if you're sitting down and eating junk food, that's one thing. But if you're eating healthy food, you're gonna feel satiated. So um, it never felt like a slog to me. I think once we took my second round of measurements, the end of September, and even though I wasn't seeing a ton on the scale, I saw the inches start
Mm-hmm.
to move. That catapulted me a bit. And then I think I went out about that time and I bought my own in-body scale so I could start to see the visceral fat, I could see the muscle mass, I could see the actual body fat. So then it became about tracking the data and I was in. And then
Mm.
the numbers started to move and I think every time we talked it just felt like a
Hey, I
celebration.
know. I was like, I'm more excited than you. Okay, maybe I'm second more excited. But I mean, it's been such a lovely journey, Tammy, because again, there hasn't been, it's not like this quick fix diet. Like this has been behavior changes. It's been dialing a few things. Because at first, the first month, we didn't move a lot and we had to
Mm-mm.
kind of shift. And you're like, oh, okay, now I realize how much was in this, that I was adding
Mhm.
maybe a little bit too much. So let's just tailor it down. Let's make it so that it works for my lifestyle. Sure, there's still like what we talk about every week is compromise. Where do you want to spend that? Do you want to go out and have a glass of wine? Okay, well then we program that in. But we do have to still give that give and take of what's important to me in my budget. And now we're not in that fat loss phase anymore. We're trying to transition you out safely and appropriately to where you're not having to, but now you have the education and you know what you can view and see on your plate and what that looks like. And maybe swapping out some choices, some behavior changes there because you were already really healthy. But we've also worked through a lot of rep ranges. We've,
Yeah.
worked in a way to where programming is still stimulating you. and challenging you, but it doesn't always look the same, that it kind of fluctuates through different what programming should look like. It shouldn't always be the same. So I've just loved having you on as a client because it shows that at 56, you're not relying. It's like, no, you don't everyone doesn't have to be on hormone therapy. Everyone doesn't have to, do this or whatever. But that when you follow a system, it works.
Yeah. So I would maybe bring up three things. And
Mhm.
one is around deprivation. I never deprived myself throughout everything that we did in our caloric recommendations. You said early on, just stick with the big rocks,
Yeah.
prioritize your protein and prioritize your strength training, and it will fall into place. There were nights, um, I'm going to throw myself out here under the bus, but I like canned whipped cream. That's
Oh, me
yeah,
too.
hello. So there were nights I'd be at a point and it's like, well, I have 50 calories left in my bank and I have a little sweet tooth. I'm gonna do
Yeah.
that. Or I probably went several weeks without drinking just because I know enough that that's a slippery slope for me and
Mhm.
it opens the door to snacking. So once I got to a certain point, my husband and I would start going back out again. And, I worked around having wine or I worked around having a specific meal or dessert. I just knew the next
Mhm.
day it would show up on the scale. So I never felt like, oh my God, I have to wait 6 weeks before I can have a piece of pumpkin pie. And that was never our approach. So the other piece of this, which is significant, is I had my blood work done in November. And I was talking earlier in our conversation today about my cardiac numbers. And those cardiac numbers now have come down significantly. So I am trending back towards normal. My inflammation markers are spot on. My functions are spot on, and that blood work is trending back to normal around my cardiac lab work. So that is a huge deal for me as
Yes.
well. Yeah,
Massive.
yeah.
Well, in parting, what would some words of advice be for anyone else who's maybe been in your situation or feels how you
Yeah,
have felt?
yeah. There's a lot of information out in our, hello, in our feeds. You search one thing and all of a sudden
Yeah.
it's like you have information about supplements, about training styles. My feeling is that build your advisory group, like get your professional resources, find people that you trust, take in a lot of information around this conversation with perimenopause and listen to your gut. If something doesn't feel right, if all of a sudden you're hearing that you can be in the gym for 12 minutes a day for 5 days a week and you can maintain your health or your fitness, that's probably not the right thing to follow. So my opinion is, as much as it is important to take in a lot of information, it's also really good to just listen to your gut too and see what feels right for you and for your lifestyle.
Yes. Well, Tammy, thank you so much for having this conversation. It has been such an honor for me to work with you. You've been just like textbook with you have done the work, and I want to make sure that everyone knows, like, it doesn't mean that it's easy.
No.
But you've done the work and you've put in the time and you've put in the energy and you've put in the trust. And I'm thrilled with the results that we've had, and I'm excited that we now get to transition you out and build up on those calories we stayed very modest the whole time, but we got the results that exactly how we should. And I just appreciate you trusting in me, and I appreciate you sharing your story. Because again, I hear about it, and it's one thing for me to say it, but it's another to hear, some actual clients come forth and know that you can get results after 50.
Thanks, Hailey. And I'm really looking forward to now turning the corner and focusing on more and more strength and getting my running speeds back to where they were, and just a new
Different
goal.
goals.
Yeah, different goal.
Yeah.
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 Well, thank you so much,
Thank you.
Tammy. Thank you for
Thanks,
sharing your
Hailey.
story. Thanks for listening.
If you enjoyed this episode, please consider giving us a 5-star review and sharing the Body Pod with your friends.
Until next time.